Hey, so got the team here, got our first session with humility with Don Reynolds. So Don can give you sort of his story. I shared Sergeant Major's bio so you guys can read that. But before he gives the intro and sort of what he's about, he's a great man, first and foremost. Good family guy. Really appreciate the connection between the Reynolds and Morano family, and probably one of the most humble leaders that's accomplished, and probably one of the funniest storytellers too. So my best memories are long road trips from Pendleton to Yuma to just go harass infantry small unit leaders course and military working dogs, or creep on scout sniper course and they're trying to do stalking lanes, or tell IULC students that their orders suck. He's just hilarious, and he's a great storyteller. So to give him props before he gets started, if you're not following him, go follow him on Instagram. Handle is Norseman_9. So NORSEMAN_9. Really good example of how to actually use social media and not suck, and motivate some greatness in the next generation. So Sergeant Major, brother Don, I'm honored and humbled that you're here. Over to you, my friend.
All right. Good morning, or good morning. Is it morning where you guys are at? Whatever time of the day. Like you said, I'm Sergeant Major Reynolds. So there's nothing better than starting off a class on humility or a discussion on humility by talking about yourself, right? So I'll just lay it out. I'm an 0331 by trade, 0369, was with 322614. I was with 24 with Master Sergeant Brown. I think he can remember my reign of terror out there. And then you either die a hero or become a villain. So I opted for first sergeant, but I got hooked up and was able to come right back as a first sergeant to Indian Weapons Company 37, served with Captain Morano at IULTC, and was the director of combat instructor school all the way up until I got selected for promotion to sergeant major. And they finally caught my bitch ass and gave me orders to recruiting duty in the middle of Minnesota. So what you see right now is I'm in California. I came out for recruiter assignments. So it's always great to come out to San Diego and tell a recruiter he's getting posted to Fargo, North Dakota. They love it. But I caught COVID my last day in San Diego. So I'm quarantined to my family's house. So I returned to Minnesota on Friday. And from what I hear, it's like -15 there. So I can't wait to go back. Let's get into it. Humility is such a broad topic, and we can approach this from so many different angles. Getting ready to do this, you can talk about it from the perspective of a school or a training event that you did that humbled you, kind of broke you down or made you reevaluate your professional or your personal values or your professional ability. We could talk about ego, right? And there's a million memes on social media about ego and bad leaders who micromanage everything and how they crush morale. But in an effort to drill down on what I want to talk about today, I took a look at your guys' expectations of the blood stripe. And I went specifically to the humility portion, right? So that document was created by your commander, who, close to 20 years in the Marine Corps, has decided that, humility is a vital component towards being successful as a non-commissioned officer. So, referencing that and kind of bracketing in on how I wanted to do this discussion on humility, I'm going to read it to you. So, in that document, it says all are recognized as students of each other's experienced thoughts, actions, and reflective feedback. All members must be quick to listen, deliberate to understand, and eager to practice each other's ideas. So with that in mind, what does that mean to you guys? 81s. I love picking on 81s. Somebody from 81s, tell me, what does that mean to you guys in your day-to-day routine as non-commissioned officers, staff non-commissioned officers? Yeah, you thought that you're just going to sit by the soda machine and not get called on.
Yeah. There we go. All right, I was saying, as an NCO, like when you get back from, let's say, like an advanced school or something, it's hard to come back and still be a student and continue to learn, because you think you know everything, you don't want to hear from anyone, so it's it's easy to not be humble, I would say, but I think once you get out of that mindset, you can continue to learn from up and down, even your junior guys will teach you something. I feel I think when you'll be good, and you can always continue to learn.
I think that's good. I think that's good. So it sounds to me like your CO wants to create a tight dynamic team where each member of the group stands to learn from one another, and each Marine's input is considered and valued regardless of their rank or their position. So, you know, we weren't always that way with the NCO staff, NCO culture, especially within a platoon. And I think it's important, you know, to understand where we're at now is kind of understand where we came from in the past, right? So I'll tell you a story real quick that was told to me about 40 years ago. I think it was like 1982. The Commandant of the Marine Corps, General PX Kelly, went out to 29 Palms and was observing a training event. One of the infantry battalions was out there in the defense, right? So he jumps into this hole, comes across this PFC, and this PFC's face announced. So the Commandant starts asking him questions, just basic questions that this kid, you know, that he's supposed to understand, like, what's your sector of fire? What's your target engagement criteria? And the kid has no answer for anything. So the Commandant finally gets frustrated, looks at the kid and says, "And what the hell are you doing in this hole right now? Like, what's your job?" And the kid looks at the Commandant and says, "Look, sir, all I know is my squad leader said, get in this hole, face this way, or else he's going to beat the shit out of me." Right? So that's kind of funny, right? But that's the exact opposite of what we require from our Marines today. I would argue that the requirements for training today's infantry Marines are harder and more complex than they've ever been. In a perfect world, we're looking to groom a PFC who can understand and operate independently, solely off your intent. He can understand mission type orders, feels comfortable enough in his role to exercise initiative in the absence of his superiors, yet he still possesses that old Marine Corps discipline where you can look at him and say, take a knee, face outboard, and come back 2 hours later. And that kid's still doing the same thing. So that's a broad skill set. And that requires a whole host of learned behaviors that in the past, we as Marines really didn't focus on, right? You know, we're known for the full metal jacket style, do as I say or else, I'm going to kick your ass, hey, listen up, boot. You don't get that type of Marine in an autocratic, you know, shut the fuck up, boot, do as I say or else type culture. So with that, bracketing in, I'd like to discuss how leaders can exercise humility in order to foster an environment which meets the intent of your commander's expectations. So getting ready to do that, I scoured the internet and I was kind of looking at TED Talks and I was looking at military, you know, sites and things like that to kind of drill down on this humility piece. And I came across just absolute gold on Instagram, right? So it's a female lieutenant, and she's all done up. She's got her hair is perfect, right? She's got her makeup done. She's got her nails, a French manicure, right? And she's in there talking about humility, right? So as she's snapping her neck and pursing her lips and talking about how every day I exercise humility, I thought, how ironic is this? That her definition, the point of the post was not humility. The point of the post was to try to look like a Kardashian and a set of alphas, right? So she's drawing attention to herself by talking about how humble she is, right? But all of her behaviors and everything like that suggest otherwise. And she's not the only one. I just graduated a course where my instructors were senior sergeants majors. And, you know, how many times have you heard a senior enlisted Marine or a Marine say, I'm here for the Marines? And then they would just rattle on about every single general officer that they had served next to, right? So it's almost a contradiction in terms. You're here for the Marines, but the first words out of your mouth are who you are, what you've done, and what you've accomplished. You know, maybe you're not exactly here for the Marines. And the fact that you have to say that to me, the first words out of your mouth, lets me know that this is some sort of like inferiority complex that you have because you're not there for the Marines. So it's like, you got to make that known. Hey, I'm just here to take care of Marines, but everything that you do every single day does not take care of the Marines. And I think, you know, some of you have experienced leadership like that, and it permeates down to the squad level where you have, you know, that squad leader that says like, I'm just here to be a good dude to the dudes. But everything that they do, they treat their new joins like a slave labor force, and they turn a blind eye to the jackassery that goes on with the senior Marines in the squad. So for the sake of the group, let's define humility. What is your definition of humility? Snipers.
So I think I'll speak for the group on this one. Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead.
All right, sweet. Humility to me is sort of just being able to like stay modest. And when I think about like applying humility to what we do, I kind of think about it as being able to stay in like the student mindset, always trying to learn something. But basically just not like becoming or developing that like superiority mindset over like who you work with. I think that's just how I apply it
Okay.
in our situation most of the time.
Thank you. So according to Webster's dictionary on Google, and Google is the motherfucking authority on everything, right? Humility is a modest or low view of one's own importance, humbleness, right? So what does that look like in a leader? Heavy guns. What does humility look like in a leader? Those kids from the soda machine are not getting up. They're like right in front of the camera too. If you're not going to participate, move. You're IDing yourself. All right. Can you figure? You good? Okay.
Hey,
Go
so
ahead.
I'm a couple flowers. Humility to me looks like a leader that puts himself before his Marines.
All right. Thanks.
You.
So let's narrow it down to this. Exercising humility is in regards to what you need to do to create that environment where you can create an infantry Marine, the kid that you just get from the School of Infantry and turn him into someone that can exercise initiative, think maturely, operate independently, and still possess that same sort of Marine Corps discipline that we pride ourselves on, where you can put him on post or put him out somewhere and he's going to stay there and you don't have to worry about it. Exercising humility as a leader will strengthen that environment because it's going to pay big dividends for you as a leader and tighten the bonds of your team. And here's how. First thing, Marines can smell a fraud. We all have examples in our head right now of the guy who fakes the answer, bluffs and blusters his way through every training event, never admits a mistake or weakness, despite it being very apparent to everybody else that he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He doesn't really generate any sort of loyalty or allegiance amongst the guys he's leading. Everyone kind of rolls their eyes and talks shit after he leaves. People don't follow him. They just do what he says because it's the path of least resistance. How much buy-in would a leader like this gain by simply turning to a squad and saying something like, guys, I screwed up. I need some help. Anybody have any idea on how to do this? I think they would gain quite a bit. There would be a lot of buy-in from the Marines in the small unit. If somebody would turn around and say, guys, I realize I'm punting this. I have no idea what's going on. Can somebody please help me? A conversation like this leads to buy-in, right? Marines feel like, oh, wow, you're asking for my input. You want to know my thoughts on this. You're admitting that you're not infallible. You're not God. You don't have the answers for everything. And then the team can start to gel because everybody feels like, one, you're more relatable to your subordinates because you've admitted weakness, you've admitted your shortcomings. And number two is that these guys start to have a little bit of a say-so in, how they're about to go do things or life in the squad, the section, the platoon, however you want to shake it. All right. Remember this, we are in a life and death business. So you guys may be put in a position where you're going to ask one of your Marines to forfeit their lives in pursuit of accomplishing the mission. The least you can do as a small unit leader is treat your subordinates like they matter and their insight is valued. So in my opinion, true humility as a leader requires 4 ingredients, and we'll talk about them. So number 1 is recognizing you are not the end all be all, reducing the ego. Integrity, basing your decisions on a core set of beliefs of what is right. 3, confidence. And 4, mutual respect, recognizing the contributions, the value, the strengths and weaknesses that each Marine, no matter what their rank is, brings into the fight. So let's start with number 1, reducing your ego, right? It's kind of hard to do in the Marine Corps, right? We promote a sort of type A culture. persona. We push NCOs to take charge. I know me as a sergeant major, my go-to thing when I don't understand what's going on and things are getting chaotic, I just start shaking my fist and I yell, NCOs take charge. What the hell, right? We place a premium on decisive actions, physical fitness, and for guys that meet this metric, they start to get a little puffed up, a little conceited, a little arrogant, and start overestimating their importance to the group. So let's talk about the most effective way for egos to get reduced. And, I'll speak from experience. It's to have your ego crushed. All right. There's been several occasions where I've had my ego crushed professionally as a Marine. So a show of hands right now, who's had their ego crushed in a professional setting where you thought one, exactly. Right. So we've all been there. Right. And then secondly, another way to reduce your ego is to kind of witness and be humbled by the actions of your Marines. Right. So I want to tell you very briefly how I got my ego crushed. I was a sergeant machine gun section leader in 3-2. I had done 2 deployments with the unit. I was kind of like the golden boy. I'd been meritoriously promoted to corporal. Then I got promoted to sergeant. The company had been together for 2 years. So I knew everybody from the CO all the way down to my platoon commander. I could kind of, those types of Marines that can just float around the battalion, get anything they want accomplished, pop into people's offices. Everybody loves them. They've been around forever. Everybody respects them. That was me. So when I did get promoted to sergeant, I went into re-enlist and I took orders for drill instructor duty for the summer of 2004. Now, before you roll your eyes and say drill instructor duty and shut me down because you see my high and tight haircut and you think that I'm one of those guys that was trying to run from the fleet, understand during the time period, we had just got back from the invasion of Iraq and we didn't think that we were going to go back. There wasn't going to be a part 2, a part 3, or part 4. We had no idea that it was going to go on for years. So drill instructor duty at that time for like a young infantry sergeant was like the next hardest thing. So I had my orders for drill instructor duty. I was all set to go in summer of 2004. And my company had asked me, hey, Reynolds, since you're not going to deploy with us, can you work over in the Armory for your last couple of months until you transition out? I said, yeah, no problem. So what happened was this: the company broke down into 2 separate contingents to go to the Kabul embassy in Afghanistan. So the first half went. I was in the Armory. I had given up my billet. I was no longer the machine gun section leader. When that first half left with my CO, my first sergeant, we got a brand new XO and a brand new company gunny that were supervising the remain behind element in that group that was going to go out 6 months later on the second wave. I had never met this gunny, and this dude showed up and he was a total dickhead. He had this inferiority complex because he didn't complete the invasion with the Marines. So I think every day he was really, really hard on the NCOs to kind of show how tough he was because he didn't participate in combat with the rest of us. He didn't know me from Adam. And the first day he walked into the Armory, saw a sergeant working in the Armory, and the first words out of his mouth were, "What's a sergeant doing in the Armory? You some sort of shitbird?" So I had gone from the golden boy to now nobody around to kind of like sing my praises, stroke my ego. And I'm doing battle with this gunnery sergeant who doesn't know anything about me and thinks I'm just this giant piece of shit because I'm working in the Armory. I tried to explain to him like, hey, Gunny, I got orders for drill instructor school. I'm not deploying with the unit. And I guess he didn't like the fact that I spoke so authoritatively on my future, because he walked away and said, like, we'll see about that. And by the end of the day, he had convinced the battalion sergeant major to modify my orders at DI school. And I got drug on a deployment to Afghanistan where I had no billet. The Marines that I had led on the previous deployment for the invasion of Iraq, I was their machine gun section leader, were now watching me like fill sandbags and do every mundane working party that this gunny could think of. And when I wasn't doing that, the martial arts program was relatively new. So there was a major on the staff there, and this gunny was trying to curry favor with the major. So guess who the Uki was for this major to earn his green belt? Sergeant Reynolds, right? So I was pissed off. I was miserable. I canceled my orders. I got out of the Marine Corps. And I thought that when I landed in Camp Lejeune after the deployment, and my first sergeant asked me like, hey, when you going to DI school? And when I turned around and told him, hey, I'm getting out, I thought the commandant was going to call. I thought I'd get a call from the president. I thought everybody would line up and try to kiss my ass and kind of keep me around. But the reality was I didn't even get a goodbye. I get nothing, right? No one called, no one wrote. 7 days later, I was a civilian. Kind of let me realize where I stood, right? I wasn't that important. I wasn't as great as I thought I was. And they let me go pretty easy. And guess what happened? The unit continued on as usual. And I was left to kind of figure out my next move, which obviously I went back in the Marine Corps, right? So the next thing is to look at humbling actions of your Marines. So when I did come back in the Marine Corps, I got assigned a 2-6 Echo. I was a squad leader in a place called Fallujah. And my squad got called out one day for a react because our second platoon, one of our squads from second platoon got hit by a sniper. Like a scene out of Full Metal Jacket, the sniper was schwacking the last guy in the patrol. And then he was shooting from the trunk of a vehicle. We didn't realize that was a TTP at the time. So as Marines were throwing smoke and running out to try to pull the first casualty out of the street, he was drilling headshots on the rest of them. And by the time they kind of figured this out, he had already shot 3 Marines. They were laying in the street. So my squad went out there, did the medevac. We brought him to Fallujah Surgical. And one of the Marines was my blood type. So I'm sitting there getting blood taken from me to give a blood transfusion. As I'm sitting there with the tubes in my arm, we get a call over the radio saying there's been another casualty. So I have to send my Marines back out into the city without me. I was an autocratic leader at that time. I wasn't like a total jerk, but I had a very heavy hand on how things were supposed to be done. I supervised everything, and it kind of scared me to send these guys back out into a hostile city without me there, but they left. I had no choice. They left. Once I was done with the transfusion, I was pacing around the parking lot in the surgical unit, and I was like waiting for them to get back because I was very, very concerned. I heard over the radio that they were coming in. They had the casualty. They come pulling into the Fallujah surgical unit in the back of an Iraqi police pickup truck. And what had happened was our Humvee, their Humvee, the sniper had shot out the front tires of the vehicle. So my corporal rolled on the rims to the nearest ECP. My Marines jumped out, stole an Iraqi police truck, threw the casualty in the back of the Iraqi police truck. The casualty had his jaw blown off because he was shot in the back of the skull with a 7.62 round. So it blew his jaw out from the front. So as they're driving to Fallujah Surgical, my RO, who was a Lance Corporal at the time, had the presence of mind to do an emergency tracheotomy on this kid with a Bic pen and figure out a way to roll freaks to the front gate of the Fallujah ECP to let them know that there was going to be an Iraqi vehicle approaching the gate at high speed and do not light it up. When I saw them come in, I was amazed. And looking at their actions, I was humbled because, when I reflected on that later, I don't know if I would have had the presence of mind to think that quickly to go steal a vehicle, to do the tracheotomy. I don't know what I would have done. Chances are I would have pulled over to the side and called a wrecker or called somebody to come help us out. So I was amazed by their actions. I was humbled by their actions. And after that day, I kind of took my foot off the wheel a little bit and gave a little more leeway, a little more, I loosened up the left and right lateral limits and was more open to input from my Marines. So the next ingredient is integrity, which I'm not going to belabor. That's a class into and of itself, because the concept of integrity as a leader is a class in and of itself. Where it applies to humility is basing your decisions on a core set of beliefs based off a strong moral character. So who haven't I called on yet? 81s again. What do you think I mean by using integrity in regards to humility, right? Basing your decisions off a strong core, strong moral center of beliefs.
I think integrity is important in regards to humility, just in the sense, like, a lot of us kind of get wrapped up in like, oh, I'm the corporal, I'm the sergeant, I've done this before, I know what's right, or I know how things are supposed to be done, but not really like driving your decisions based on that, based on just doing the right thing, not because of you or because like you're the man, but because it's the right thing to do.
Perfect. So it means, to me, it means we need to walk the walk and meet the same expectations that we demand from our Marines, right? No Marine from myself, your company commander on down, is above the standard or above the law, right? And, chances are right now, you guys know Marines in your battalion who are in a leadership position that may or may not meet the standard, or there's questions about how they met that standard, or, people turn a blind eye to the fact that they're not meeting the standard. No one's above the law. Recognizing this, no matter what station you are at life, you're not exempt from rolling your sleeves up and getting down and dirty just like everybody else is a key ingredient to integrating integrity with humility, right? So let's move into confidence real quick. And I'd like to start with some questions, right? So what are the benefits? Anybody this time. So I don't want to call on somebody, just somebody offer it up. What are the benefits of confidence in your abilities as a leader? What are the benefits of a confident leader?
I think your Marines are definitely more willing to follow a confident leader than someone who's shaky or unsure of himself.
Okay. How does a leader who lacks confidence behave?
A leader who lacks confidence?
Yep.
Second guessing themselves all the time.
Right. But how does that translate to the squad, the section? So you got a guy that's always second guessing himself, that's unsure of things, right? So what normally happens when those types of people take control?
His Marines will do the exact same thing and second guess him.
Right. So, one of the things that I thought of when I thought, what are some of the key indicators of a Marine or of a leader that doesn't really have confidence in what they're doing, right? So they withhold information, right? Because, if they get the information and they keep it to themselves and you don't know what's going on, then you won't be able to highlight the fact that they don't know what's going along, right? So information becomes power to them. They live in fear of being found out, and they're reactive vice proactive because they don't know enough about what's going on around them to ever to exercise any sort of initiative or get the Marines moving in the right direction, right? And a lot of times these people are very much, they're angry, they kind of yell and scream, or you have the complete opposite where they're completely cocooned and they're involved in nothing. And the squad, the section, the fire team, whoever is kind of left to just kind of, I don't know, move in circles around them and wait for someone who knows what's going on to tell them what to do. I'd like to give you an example of confidence, and it's one that I think is probably the most powerful story of confidence that I've ever read or ever come across. Has anybody ever heard of Major Doug Zembeck? So your officers probably have, some of you younger enlisted guys may not have, but many years ago during the first assault of Fallujah, Captain Doug Zembeck at the time was the company commander of Echo Company 2nd Battalion 1st Marines. And they had the hardest sector in the city of Fallujah. They had the Jolan sector, which was unlike the rest of the city, which is kind of built up, kind of modern. The Jolan sector was very much 7th century. The streets made no sense. They weren't built on the grid pattern. They were kind of these windy, very, very tight channelizing areas, right? And it was also the nerve center at the time of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And his Marines fought there. And he was profiled in No True Glory and all over the news because his Marines loved him and the company kicked ass, right? So much was said about this guy. He went on to be an officer in the CIA Special Activities Division while on duty with the Marines, and he was killed in action in Sadr City in 2007. But during his time as a Marine company commander, he was profiled everywhere as an example of what a Marine leader should be. He kind of drew the perfect balance between being tough, aggressive, as well as being compassionate and humble. A profile was written on him from his first sergeant, this guy named Sergeant Major Bill Skiles, who himself was another decorated war hero, former scout sniper, all around badass. And he was talking about a specific event. Captain Doug Zembeck had graduated from the Naval Academy, and he was known through high school and college as one of the fiercest competitors and had the toughest work ethic. And he was a Division I NCAA champion wrestler, right? So they're out in the field, and like most Marine companies, what do Marines start doing when there's downtime? They start ground fighting, right? So the biggest machine gunner walks up to Captain Zembeck without knowing that Captain Zembeck was a NCAA champion collegiate wrestler, points at him and says, "Sir, I want to grapple with you," right? So the first sergeant peeks up, right? And he starts to smile because he's like, this devil dog's about to get his ass kicked, right? He has no idea that the CO is an NCAA champion, right? So what happens next really surprised the first sergeant is he says that, the captain and the Marine start going at it, right? And without really the Marine really noticing, the captain gives the kid his back. The kid throws him in a choke and the captain taps, and the captain gets up, shakes the Marine's hand and says, "Great job, warrior. The enemy's really in for it if he's got to face you," right? So think about that for a second. Think about confidence in your abilities. This guy knows, and he's got the background and he's trained all of his life. He could literally dismantle this Marine in front of the whole company, maintain his ego, and walk away the dominant alpha male in Echo Company 2-1, right? No one can beat me, and I'm your CEO, right? A lot of people would do that. This guy was so confident in his abilities that he was willing to sacrifice a little bit of his personal pride in order to imbibe a little bit of warrior spirit into one of his Marines, which more than likely made that kid more successful and improved his outlook, or, you know, generally made his day and got him ready for the mission. I think that's a pretty awesome example of confidence in a leader. I mean, think about it this way. Most UFC fighters aren't getting into bar fights when someone gives them the, you know, bumps in them or does whatever, because they're confident. They know, hey, like they could take your head off. And most Marines that are confident in any aspect of their duties aren't the first ones to jump up and kind of steal the show or steal someone else's thunder. It's like they always say, empty barrels make the most noise. So moving out of confidence, let's talk about mutual respect real quick, right? So this is something that I had to learn the hard way. All right. Fellas, I won't lie to you. When I was a corporal machine gun section leader, I was a maniac. I was ridiculous. The new joins, it was like, you know, I looked at new joins as just objects of abuse, right? And I yelled and screamed at my section. It was my way or the highway. And I was really like offering, I did not share the power whatsoever, right? They did exactly what I said. And the second I walked away, they stopped doing anything that I would ask, right? Because they hated my ass. And I realized this one day when I turned the corner and saw my machine gun section standing on the other side of the barracks. And one of them looked at me and I saw him mouth the words, he went, oh, fuck, right? And I was like, damn, they hate my ass, right? So over the years, I've kind of softened my approach and kind of looked at, why did I act that way? Because I wasn't confident. I didn't know what was going on. I was, you know, so I felt like, you know, the harder I acted, the more I yelled, the more I demanded things to be done the certain way, then the Marines wouldn't be able to see the chinks in my armor, right? But have you ever served in a unit where it felt like everything you did didn't matter? Like you're just worthless peons in a big green machine and nothing you ever said or did would ever be taken into account? Raise your hand if you ever felt that way. I mean, some of us have, right? They're not, because they're going to be like, hey, the CEO thinks that we're talking about our company. That's not what I mean, right? Have you ever been completely disrespected as a man by a leader where the ass chewing lost any sort of corrective action and all you could think about was kicking this guy's ass? Yeah, absolutely, right? Checked into India 3-7 and my company was out in the field. I hadn't met anybody yet. They were out at Morgan's Well. You guys ever heard of Morgan's Well?
Yep.
Yeah, I bet you have. Hadn't met anybody yet. I got a phone call from the company XO and he says, hey, First Sergeant, could you go upstairs and sit in on the training meeting with the battalion XO and just verify that we have the defense locked on for 3 weeks next week, right? I said, yeah, roger that, sir. Now I don't know anybody. I don't even know who the battalion XO is. So I go up to the meeting, I sit down, I take my seat, you know, and I'm just looking around the room. And when he finally gets to India Company, I introduce myself and I say, hey, sir, my name is First Sergeant Reynolds. I just checked in yesterday, you know, according to Lieutenant so-and-so, the company, you know, is requesting to do the defense for the next 3 days next week, right? He was pissed off in general because there was like a safety stand down that he forgot about. And he was trying to get all the companies to cancel the training events so they could be back and knock out the safety stand down. So he was really real pissed off. And he looked at me and said, you're not going to get 3 days in the defense. You're only going to get 1. What do you think about that? Right. So I cracked a smile because if you're like me, when someone says you don't have to spend 3 days sitting in a hole staring at nothing, that's a good thing. Right. So I thought, hey, great. Right. Like, so I went to smile. And before I could even like get the words out of my mouth, this major points at me in a room full of lieutenants, a first sergeant with 18 years in the Marine Corps. He points his finger at me and he says, hey, First Sergeant, this isn't some smiley, smirky fucking meeting, you know, and he starts getting into my ass in front of all these people. I literally, it took every ounce of courage to not jump across this table and start beating this man to death because I thought, like, just because you outrank me doesn't mean you get to speak to me any way that you feel like, right? You will respect me. It's just like I respect you. Sometimes we get a little rank and we move up and bill it and think we can just say or do whatever we want. We start talking crazy. Recognize, no matter who you're speaking to, especially your junior Marines, you're speaking to someone who had the courage to raise their right hand, pick the Marines, pick the infantry, and serve their country for the next 4 years. Your shitbirds are still better than 99.9% of the rest of the population. So try shaking a hand, even for your junior Marines, looking in their eyes saying thank you or good job. Ask how their girlfriends are doing or their families are doing. Demonstrate that you're more than just some mythical corporal or sergeant or staff sergeant that comes down every once in a while, chews their ass, and then melts back away. Show them that you're a human who generally cares about them as a person and respects their contribution to the team. Every SOP that you guys determine or goes through or working on deciding that PFC, hey, Reynolds, what are you seeing out there? Like, what do you see from your side? Hey, here's what I'm seeing, Sergeant. Hey, noted, right? Whether you use it or not, it still makes that kid feel good. It still makes that kid feel like he's not just some monkey that's part of a squad or a section or a vehicle where his opinion means nothing. The best leaders that I've ever served with, and some are now general officers, have treated every Marine from the private to the chief of staff with the same level of respect. And I think that's saying something. So let's tie this all together. So why is this all important, these 4 ingredients? I'd like to leave you all with this quote. An infantry platoon is a flesh and blood organization that is in the most dangerous of businesses. There are a lot of people and things behind it that make up a war machine, but there is nothing in front of a rifle platoon or company but the enemy and possible death. Its infantry, its members must care for one another. Its leaders must cherish the men in every fire team and squad. For a rifleman, a leader's misjudgment or ignorance or inexperience can be fatal. No second chances. No rerunning the exercise until you get it right. When the word go is given, there is no turning back from the consequences. That last part, a leader's misjudgment or ignorance or inexperience can be fatal. No second chances. Always sticks with me. We ask so much from each other and the Marines who serve under us. We owe it to them to do whatever we can to create the bond of brotherhood and set them up for success on the battlefield. Remember, get over yourself. You may be the battalion NCO of the quarter or a meritorious sergeant, but you are only as important as the legacy you leave behind on the Marines who will step up and fill your shoes after you're gone. Your actions today, tomorrow, and for the remainder of your time with the battalion will dictate whether your name is mentioned with an eye roll and kind of a sigh of disgust, or with a smile and a million stories about how you taught them how to be successful as a Marine small unit leader. Remember, humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And with that, I'm done, gentlemen, unless there's any questions from me.
Thanks, brother. I'll just go around the groups, and some of the guys, if they had anything they want to ask or just dialogue with you, I appreciate all your thoughts and your time with us this morning. We still have a little bit of time before we land the plane. We don't need to go all the way until 08. I'm sitting at 07:43 now, but I'll give them around 10 to 15 minutes if they so choose to bend your ear. And I'd say to the team, keep it raw and keep it real. As you can see, the Sergeant Major, good old Don Reynolds, doesn't mind dropping the gloves and fisticuffs with his language or his perspective on just 20 plus years of infantry and pretty combat battle hardened dude. So I think if you get anything from him, aside from a smile and a high and tight, and he'll run you into the ground, the entire battalion, you'll get some honesty. And I think you can look back on this opportunity and cherish the chance to have an ear of probably one of the best 89 99s that the Marine Corps has in uniform today. So I'll just say, I'll go around the horn and let you guys unmute. And then we're sitting at 07:43. If you guys do want to say anything or don't, just have like a group moderator that says, hey, we're good here. Please keep it concise and precise. I'll give you guys about 2 to 3 minutes tops. And then if you're tripping that line, I'll probably mute you myself because I'm the Zoom moderator and I can do that. And then we'll move on to the next one. So Heinzen, since you're the top left for me, I'm going to go over to you guys and snipers. I'll mute out and you have the floor with Sergeant Major Reynolds, buddy.
Sergeant Major, Corporal Cacciardi here. My question is, what would you do if you have a subordinate or a Marine under you that's just like refusing to try and better themselves? Like you've tried getting to know them, but they're just not willing to work or to improve themselves. Like, what would you do in that situation? Great question.
That's a good question, right? So, unfortunately, we do have, they say 10%, they say whatever, but we need to look at it from this perspective. I think the deciding factor on whether or not we move ahead and separate a Marine or, punish a Marine or do anything sort of punitively to a Marine, it comes down to one question two categories, right? Is this a knowledge or skills sort of issue, or is this an attitude problem, right? So, you may have kids right now, and believe me, I'm on recruiting duty. So, I see what's coming in. You may have kids that are not as physically fit as you are, or kids that kind of bend or break much quicker than what you're used to, right? So is this something that you can work with, and how are you working with it? And then you have kids that are just straight up punks. My question to you is, as a first sergeant, having been in this situation, the first question I ask is, what was done about it, right? So great, you have a kid, he's not doing what he's told. So now what? Is there remediation? And I'm not trying to speak like headquarters Marine Corps type of lingo or the PC line, right? But what are we talking about? Are we talking about this kid falls out of a run? Because if he falls out on a run, then that's time for you to do your homework, right? It's turn around, you say to the platoon commander, hey, he fell out of the run today. He still owes me 3 miles. I'd like to run him this evening. I'm going to give him time to hydrate. I want permission. And here's what we're going to do. And here's the route we're going to take. He goes out and does it. What I have seen is this: when you make going with the program and doing what everybody else is supposed to be doing the path of least resistance, that's the route that cowards take, right? So you have to make doing your job the path of least resistance. If you're one of those people that kind of, hey, what's your problem? You can't go to the field today. Or get out of my face, right? Then that kid is going to continue to do that every time. And the Marines are used to that. They're used to someone stepping up to them, asking like one question. They give you a bullshit answer. You get frustrated and you walk away from them and you go focus your time on the rest of the Marines that are doing what they're supposed to do. And that kid marches back to the barracks, fires up the Xbox, and enjoys his weekend. What I've learned over the years is that when you turn around and say, why can't you go to the field? Come into my office. What's going on with you? Did you see anybody about that? When did you go see the corpsman? Did he give you a light duty shit? When you start peppering them with questions, right? And they realize they're going to have to go through this every single time they try to pull this bullshit. More of them than you're used to now. Almost 90% of them start to just go with the program. You're still going to get that dedicated little bit that are just down for the cause and want to go home and are willing to ride it out and take all forms of abuse and petty harassment as long as they get to go back home to mommy and daddy. You're going to find that. And why I say that is this: I don't know if you guys experienced this, but the ADSEPs for new joins when I was in 3-7 was just of epidemic proportions, right? So Kilo Company, Lima Company would get like 30 boots, and 27 of them would go see the Oscar and they'd never make it on deployment. I started making the tap out button very, very hard. If a Marine wanted to go to medical, he'd have to come see me first. Hey, what's going on? I'm the first sergeant. I need to know these things. You need to go see the Oscar. Is everything all right with you? What's going on? Marines didn't want to see me. Marines didn't want to sit down in the first sergeant's office for an hour. If a kid had to go to mental health, I drove him from 29 Palms all the way to Balboa, staring at him like this. In a beat up Nissan Altima with no air conditioning in the summertime, driving him all the way down to 1 North to the Cuckoo Bin while I'm just looking at him. No music on, windows up. His window's up, my window's down. And I'd pick him up from there the same way, right? So the story got out. It's like, if you want to pursue this option, it's going to be a trial by fire. This motherfucker is going to make you earn it. I had two kids quit and tap out of 30 boots. And the rest of the battalion, it was close to 70%. I just made it that much difficult for them. So, and at the small unit level, it's that much easier for you because you guys interact with them on a daily basis. It's very, very easy to stay on top of your one problem child, right? Give it enough time, give it 90 days, remediate, counsel, decide whether it's a knowledge and a training aspect or an attitudes thing. And if it's an attitude thing, forward this Marine along to your platoon, to your first sergeant. And when you do, make sure you hand that first sergeant a stack of counseling sheets saying, I have tried to work with this kid and he refuses to get with the program. And any 89.99 worth of salt is going to take that and run with it. They're going to take that as gold because more often than not, all we get is like, I want to fire this kid with no documentation, no nothing, and you can't do anything with it. So that's my thought on that. And that's how I would try to motivate sort of the wayward. Make doing your job the path of least resistance, because cowards always take the path of least resistance, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thanks, Cardi. We will go on to heavy guns, anti-armor. I'm going to give you guys, Don, with you and them, let's keep it at like 5 minutes total, like the back and forth. 4 or 5 minutes, we'll do the same, and then we'll land the plane at 08. to respect everybody's time. So heavy guns, anti-armor, over to the soda machine room for y'all.
Hey, good morning, Sergeant Major, Staff Sergeant Willett. I just wanted got a lot of guys getting out of the Marine Corps pretty quickly. I just wanted to talk about briefly of why you decided to get back in. What was the decision point there? And thanks for all of the kind words of wisdom. Appreciate it, Sergeant Major.
So here's the deciding point. And here's what I tell Marines that are going to get out. I say this: imagine 6 months from now, you're eating breakfast, getting ready to go to school or getting ready to go to your job, and you see on the news, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, just, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines getting some in Syria or getting some somewhere in the Ukraine, right? If you would feel that stabbing in the stomach of like, oh, I want to be there with my boys, then you need to stick around. If you can look at the TV screen and feel nothing about it other than like, hey, go boys, and not really feel much of it and not feel any sort of like regret or guilt, then, maybe the Marine Corps isn't for you. My deciding point was when I got out, my freshman year, I was there for the first day. I spent all my time in the student lounge, and all I saw on the news was news clips and CNN of Marines getting some in rooftops in Iraq. I took a look around at what my peers were doing in school and what my buddies in the Marines were doing, and it was an easy decision. I went running right back to the Marine Corps. So if that answers your question, if you can look at what the Marine Corps is doing from the outside and not feel regret, not feel guilt, not feel that desire to be a part of it anymore, then maybe you should go. But if you are honest with yourself and feel like if you were to see something like that from the outside looking in and wish you were a part of it, then you need to raise your hand and stick around.
Man, you're a good recruiter. It's like they slated you all as a sergeant major. Nice job. Cool. Hey, heavy guns. I'm looking at you, Felty. Can you give me a thumbs up if you have anyone else, or give me a thumbs down for your group if you want me to move on to the next group, please? They said they're done with you. They're on to the next. Perfect. Hey, let's go over to 81s. I'll let you guys have the floor. Let's give you guys like 3 minutes back and forth, and then we'll land the plane with a popcorn round and be done.
Sergeant Major, I think we're good over here. I just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you, sir.
Maddox, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Do you have anything you want to say to my buddy Don, or any questions for him, bud? It's over to you. Go ahead and unmute your computer if you can.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
And thank you for all the Marines that have served this country.
Man.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Hey, Don, I'm going to give it over to you. Before I do, I'll let you do the mic drop proverbially, but thanks for spending your time with us this morning, man. I will keep it punctual because I already got harassed by First Sergeant for being out of uniform, even though I said civvies were the uniform, because he's like, we got command and staff, man. Come on, let's go. So yeah, behind me, Tracy. That's Tyler Nichols is my First Sergeant. And then Griff Lawrence is my XO. So he's the RD FSO that's been doing a great job. Our other XO picked up cap and moved on to ITC because he wanted to be a Raider. Great dude, but he's doing an awesome job. So this is the full horseman right here, and really blessed to have him. But hey, man, I'm really thankful for the opportunity to meet you and just know you more as Don and more as, the husband and father of your family than the sergeant major piece, which is equally impressive. So you're still looking great. Thanks for not sucking at life and, still being able to crush everybody in PT. You're like David Goggins' hero. He wakes up and wants to be like you. And
try it,
man, it's an honor to have you with us. But over to you, and then when you're done, I'm going to close this out, bud.
No, I just remember where you're at. You guys, whether you know it or not, these are great days. You guys are going to miss these moments. You guys are going to miss the experiences, whether it's combat in the E Club parking lot on Hanson, right? Or screwing around somewhere in the CTA doing, you know, your 300th evolution of patrols, right? To make time. These are great days you guys are living. I look back on it now with like such fondness, and trust me, I've sat where you're sitting many, 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 many times in Okinawa. But nothing can replicate the brotherhood, the camaraderie, and the importance of what it is that you do. Nowhere else in the world where people your age be given the level of responsibility that you are and that you have and that you exercise every day. I mean, you're in charge of people's lives, theoretically, right? You are in charge of their development, and your responsibility to make sure that they're proficient infantrymen, effective war fighters, and just all around good men and women. If you have women in your unit, you know, all placed on the burden of someone that's, you know, in their early 20s, mid 20s, or, you know, barely pushing 30 is significant. Understand that, recognize that you're a part of something much bigger than yourself. This cloth, a lot of good people have died to make this cloth that we wear something worth wearing, something that inspires fear from our enemies. So take that with you every day. And I ask that when you look in the mirror and you shave, you know, get ready for work, say, how am I going to contribute today? And how am I going to make my Marines better? And if you can do that, and you can look yourself at the end of the day and say that you did do that every day, then I think that that's a good life and that's a good existence as a Marine. And I wish you all well.
Thanks, brother. Give our love to the family from the Moranos out here.